All right, guys. So welcome to episode 40 of SYQH Radio. And I'm actually doing this live because there's been a question that just keeps on coming up, and it comes up in various forms, right? A lot of the times, it's kind of a question that goes unasked, and when it goes unasked, it just leads to absolutely no activity whatsoever or hesitation that shows up in other ways, right? So um, on this show, we're here to help you make smarter real estate decisions, and help you through clarity, strategy, and my perspective, for what that's worth. I'm over 13 years in real estate now. And, the question that we're here to pose and to answer that a lot of homeowners they're asking themselves right now. And sometimes they ask me outright, right? But they're asking it whether they're saying it out loud or not, especially with everything going on in the world. So, should you be scared about selling your home right now in today's atmosphere, right? Maybe you're watching the news. Maybe you're seeing headlines about interest rates. I just saw one just a little while ago talking about how everything was going to kind of be the same through the fourth quarter of 2027. Maybe you keep on hearing about the word inflation and how it's not going down or how it is going up. Maybe you're concerned about the conflict in the Middle East. Um, Maybe it's gas prices, right? Maybe you're wondering whether there's any buyers out there. Is anything happening? Or maybe you're asking yourself, you know, I've been talking to all these different people, and I don't know, am I going to be able to find another home? Am I going to be able to afford another home, right? And they're all very valid concerns, right? They're concerns that I hear from homeowners literally all the time. Um, and it comes up in conversation when I'm meeting with them or when I'm, having those initial conversations. But I really want to help you separate fear from what's actually going on, right? Um, because the truth is, many people are making decisions based on headlines instead of their own their actual situation, right? And those are two very, very, very different things. So let's talk about it, right? So, first of all, if you're feeling uncertain right now, or if you're feeling fearful, or you're feeling stuck, um, you're not alone, right? Whether it's whenever there's uncertainty in the world, in the economy, in the global scheme of things, people naturally hesitate, right? They pause, they wait, they're trying to see, what's going to happen next. And a lot of the times, things don't move quick enough on the global scale to really impact you locally. And I mean that even if there's something, done globally or the government passes something, it takes time for these things to actually, trickle down, right? And to impact us on a personal scale. Sometimes it seems like it's overnight, but a lot of times policy changes and so on, they take time to enact, to enforce, to move forward, right? But even with that said, people continue to hesitate, right? And they just end up wondering if now's the right time, and that thought switches very quickly to it's just not the right time for me, right? And that's just a blanket statement. It's almost like a knee-jerk reaction that has no real basis, right, except for that negative connotation or that negative thought. And this reminds me again of, there's different seasons, there's different things that happen, right? When the election was happening, there's always kind of a, the consumer hits pause on, or hits the brakes, slows down, pulls back, right? And the same thing happened back in 2020. And I might even link the video down below, but I did an episode in 2020, basically when we were shutting down, right? When everything was completely uncertain. I had never seen that in my life, right? I'm pretty sure most of you haven't either. And I just remember when that all started, there was just so much uncertainty, so many conflicting reports, and you know people didn't really know what was going to happen. You heard all these experts across every news medium, every channel you can imagine, and everybody was going back and forth and talking about all these things. And what's funny is, as an agent, I expected, the uncertainty to hit thing, to cause that hesitation, that uncertainty, that pause. Um, but then a whole bunch of opportunities started happening, right? Interest rates went down, buyers started going crazy, sellers were capitalizing on the marketplace, competitive offers left and right, long lines for open houses. You guys remember all that stuff, right? So even with that, people were, at the beginning, they were frozen. Buyers froze. Everybody was like, "What's going on?" They were trying to see what was going to happen next. What was the next step? Um, and at the end of the day, homes still sold. People still moved. Um, no matter what happens in the environment, you know, families still need more space or they need less space, right? Depending on how their life changed. People got married, people got divorced a lot. Um, people changed jobs. Unfortunately, a lot of people lost jobs during that time, right? And people relocated for any of these previous, life changes, or just because they wanted to get away from the city. Maybe this was their time to be able to work remotely, right? And at the end of the day, life continued on. Things continued moving. Real estate continued moving. And I tried to say then that all of that conflicting, information, all of that worry, all of that stuff going on, it just provides opportunities if you look at it through the right lens, and if you are able to, right? There's the ready, willing, and able. Those are That's a winning combination when it comes to real estate. If you think about it, most things, right? Um, Today, we're seeing something very similar, and I see it as the summer, is right around the corner. We have the spring market, um, plenty of sales, plenty of movement, but again, the concern kept on getting hooked onto the news headlines, right? And once people sit down and go through things, which I'll talk about later, when they go more on the micro level and stop, looking out here and really just bear down on their particular circumstances, you can see a big shift in that panic, in that uncertainty, in that inability or not wanting to move forward, right? So there is uncertainty now, just like there was then. There's concern all over the place. No matter when you turn on the news, you can see it, you can feel it. It's palpable, right? But given all that, the market still hasn't stopped, right? Homes are still being listed, almost on a daily basis. Homes are still going under contract. Homes are still closing, every single day. And what's weird is, as I'm recording this episode, right? Um, I have a transaction that we're closing. It should be in the next 4 days. So the market is moving. The proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the numbers, right? The question isn't whether the market is moving or not. The real question is, does moving make sense for you, right? And I think that that's where most people go wrong, because instead of asking the question, should I sell right now? At the end of the day, the real question at the end of the day is, does selling make sense for my situation right now? Do I just want this? Do I need this? Does this make sense, right? Does it make sense for me and my loved ones, right? Um, those are very different questions than, should I sell my home right now, right? Or should I be scared about selling my home? So let's talk about some of the questions that I think every homeowner should ask themselves before making a decision, right? So the first one is, and I really mean this. So if you want, I could also give you a list. Feel free to comment below or send me a text at 917-982-8899 if you'd like the top 10 questions that you should ask yourself or yourselves as a unit, as a decisive unit, as a family unit, however you own it. The 10 questions you should ask yourself if you want, if selling your home makes sense for you, right? But at least these are basic questions that I'm going to go through, and I wrote them down here. So the first question is your job and income stable, right? Um, Obviously, very important. You want to be able to afford where you're living, right? Whether that's now or if you're selling and you're moving to another property, maybe you're upsizing, so maybe you're paying a little more for the property. You want to be able to have that stable foundation, right? Or some kind of income, whatever that may be. If it is stable and employment, if your employment situation is strong, then that's going to give you options versus if it was, the other way around. If that was a real determining factor, if that's something that you feel very uneasy about, you feel like at any time, you could be let go or there could be issues with that. That's where I understand more of a hesitancy, because we don't want to put you in the wrong spot, right? We want to educate you. We want to give you as many options as possible, right? And all the information, so you can come from a place of understanding, from knowledge, from deciding whether this is right for me, for you guys. Um, but at the end of the day, if you feel that stability is not there, then you don't want to go into a situation which could, be potentially a massive problem, right? So the second question that you want to ask yourself, and these questions build upon each other, because then it gives you a full picture, right? So if you're thinking about selling, then you need to know how much equity you have, right? So I'm not saying go on Zillow. I'm not saying, it's not what Zillow says. It's not what your neighbor thinks. It's not what you hope it's worth. I have many videos on the different, what, the real prices of a home are. Check out the YouTube channel or the podcast. You can see on the episodes prior, a couple episodes back. But you want to know how much equity would you realistically walk away with after paying off the mortgage, after paying closing costs, and completing the sale, right? You want to know those numbers. And definitely, if you would like, I can send you a copy of a net sheet, which it's basically, not basically, it's a spreadsheet that we created that has formulas that have, a lot of the different fees already built in, and you can change it based on what you see the fees to be. And you would fill in what the sales price would be, and then it itemizes all the other things that would be the closing costs. And then you'll see on the bottom would be the walkaway dollar, or the net that you would be walking away with. And knowing that net is something we'll talk about a little, further along here, but that's how much you're walking away with after everything is said and done, right? You want to be armed with that. You want to know that, right? And that, the reason for that, besides it's good to know what you're putting in your pocket, is because you're going to use that money for the next property, and we'll touch base on that again, right? The next question is, what's your timeline, right? Do you need to move right now, or 6 months from now? Is it going to be a year from now? Is there something that has to happen in life for you to be ready to move? Like, do you have to wait for the kids to graduate? Are you does retirement kick in next October, and that's when you're looking to move, right? That answer matters tremendously, because again, this is all formulating a strategy or a plan based on the answers to these questions, right? It's not to go in blindly when it comes to selling your home. We dissect the situation of every seller that we sit with, and it's built up over time. It's built over time because of experience, because we add more questions to this list as we encounter more situations, or being that we're in Keller Williams, we're in a learning based environment, this class is every day. When I hear a question that would be good to ask, my prospective clients here, or you guys, we include that, because we want to make sure that, again, we round out the picture and we really give you a detailed plan, a mapped out plan, so you understand what could happen, what can happen, what you can expect. And, let's not have that many surprises. As much as I like surprises, not in this situation, right? So question number 4 is, what's your comfort level with risk? Because with every move, with every decision you make, there's always some type of risk. Now, we would be informing you what that risk would be in your particular situation. And then the question is, how comfortable are you with that, right? Can you wait? Do you need specific certainty? Are you flexible in terms, conditions, length of time, um, the risk that's involved? Always have a backup plan. There have been situations where We've been able to talk to our sellers about what's going on. They're taking advantage of the marketplace, right? Selling at a good price. And then, it comes to, is there family members that you can stay with for a little while? We had some that decided to rent out for a little bit and then finally find a place. Or are we doing both at the same time, right? Are we selling and searching at the same time? But just in case, if you can have that backup plan, the flexibility, can you put your stuff in storage and just stay with family for a little bit, or a friend, or what have you? Again, dissected situation by situation, but it's good to know how flexible you are. Not we're not telling you be as flexible as possible. It's a question, how flexible are you, right? This really will help shape the strategy completely, because then you can see, because remember, when you're negotiating the sale of your home, you're not just talking price, you're also talking about terms and conditions. That's all part of the contract, right? That includes timeline. So do they need to give you little extra time to move? There's different things that we can talk about with attorneys. The sale being contingent on you finding a place, which a lot of times is very hard to include, but it has worked in the past. Because if the buyers are also flexible and they match your flexibility, now we're making magic happen, right? So again, another reason why we need to know the answers to this. Question number 5, does your current home fit your needs? Does it fit your lifestyle? That answering that question truthfully is something that can really help you gauge how much effort you should be putting into making a move, right? And again, I've said this in the past, but I can't want to sell a property more than you, and I can't want to buy a property more than you, right? So maybe you've outgrown the place, maybe it's too much maintenance, maybe it's, you're living in a property that is too big, maybe you just want to downsize into something a little bit more manageable, maybe the kiddos have left the house and it's just you guys now. So you don't want to shovel anymore. Maybe it's time to get out of New York, just relocate and enjoy places where you don't have to shovel snow ever again. Let me tell you, every time it snows, that thought crosses the mind. So just saying. And then maybe retirement is on the horizon. Maybe that's something you're thinking about too. And like I said, you want to move to a warmer climate, or you want to move closer to family, or just a bunch of different scenarios that come to mind. Some people just want to live in a community where, the homeowners association takes care of things. We've helped people relocate to Florida into condos versus the homes that they had here, or in Arizona or Texas, California. Through Keller Williams, we have a wide network that we can connect you with, so that you have an agent helping you on the other side, finding a place, somebody that we can trust with you, right? Where there would be boots on the ground. So you're not just flying all the time to go see properties, where they help you look at properties through WhatsApp. They'll actually give you a virtual tour. They'll inform you about the area, professionals that actually know the areas. So we help you with that relocation. We've done that quite a few times, especially since 2020. That's kind of where that part of business really picked up. As you guys know, a lot of people were leaving New York at the time, and we had to really systematize that aspect of the business. So if you're thinking, or even thinking about that, or just relocating, maybe not necessarily retiring, I always think about Tampa. Uh, uh, maybe you're looking for a home that better serves your current stage of life. Maybe you're looking into a 55 plus community. We had some, we've had some of those sales in our office where, we have, let's say, a multifamily home. The owner doesn't want to be a landlord anymore, sells the multifamily or even a single family, and then moves out, to Long Island, to one of the 55 and over communities there. Um, your lifestyle really matters. So you want to ask yourself these questions again, instead of just focusing on, is this the right time? Is this the right time? And you're not really looking at your own personal situation. That's not really going to help. But if you look at these specific questions, that changes things a lot, right? Number 6 is, how financially flexible are you? So could you comfortably handle a different mortgage payment if you found the right property, right? At this point, I believe, and I forget the exact number, I think it's over 67% of homeowners have a mortgage that is under 5%. I might be butchering the numbers, but it's a big number, along with the number of homeowners that don't owe anything on their home, right? I wish I had the numbers in front of me, but this is just from something I read a while back. So the changing of the payments, right? Right now, you may not have payments, or you might be paying a very low mortgage payment, but you've been paying your mortgage for quite some time. So now you've built up equity, right? So could you handle the new payment? And the only way you're going to know what the new payment is not whether or not the interest rates went up or down, right? Because that doesn't really help. That's just a tool to know where the interest rates are and to just be afraid, right? Because anytime people say that it's high or that it's increasing or that it's not going down, it's a negative. But if you actually look at what that meant for you, how much your mortgage payment would be, then you might be surprised. Because if you think about it, if you were to sell your home, have a sizable amount of equity, right? Let's say you sold your home and you've been paying it off. After all closing costs and everything else involved, you have, $200,000-$300,000 that you netted from that sale. You can use that now to buy another property, right? So if you're using that, let's say 300,000 on a $1 million property, now your mortgage is for 700,000, not for the million. And then you have to calculate how much the monthly payments would be on that $700,000 principal, not the $1 million principal, right? So that's where knowing that would be important, how much that monthly payment would be, and are you comfortable with it? And as an added bonus, you can see in the description, I'm going to put the link below for the for a mortgage calculator where you can plug in the numbers and you'll be able to see what those numbers would look like for you. And of course, if you need connection with an actual lender, please feel free and we can reach out and connect you with someone that can help you understand what you're looking at and also come up with some type of game plan, right? Because we want to make sure that you are comfortable with those payments. Those payments don't go they don't go away right away. That's something that is a commitment, whether it's 15, 30 years, whatever it is. That's a long time, and you want to make sure that you're paying something that you are comfortable with, right? So that's important. It's just super important. Are you comfortable with? Would you want to pay that, right? Number 7, are there opportunities in the market that you simply aren't seeing? See, a lot of times people are just based on word of mouth, right? So people, right now, for example, inventory is tight. So a lot of times when sellers are talking to me about specific types of properties that they want to purchase, that type of property may not be available where they want it. But if they're flexible on the location, we might be able to find it somewhere else. Or what we also do is we hunt for off-market properties that we can potentially lock in for you, right? So that's as an added benefit, but that's something that we look for, that, the general public is not always looking for that, right? They're not digging for properties all the time. We dig for properties based on our clients' preferences, based on their needs, right? Right now, I'm actually working on finding a specific type of property that it's not on the market right now, but it might have been on the market. And also, over the years of having people that we've spoken to in the pipeline, there might be somebody that fits where, let's say 6 years ago, I talked to a homeowner that said they were going to sell when their kids graduated. Time went on, they haven't done that just yet, but their kids just graduated. Well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, right? Maybe now's the time for them to sell and for you to be the buyer, right? So those off-market opportunities could be there, different locations. Maybe having a conversation with your favorite real estate agent could help you decide that maybe what you want is not actually what you need. And maybe what you need is something that you would be happier with, right? So maybe you don't need a 3-bedroom condo overlooking the water. Maybe you're good with a 2-bedroom condo on the 6th floor of that building that has a little bit of a water view, right? Like I'm just saying. So there could be opportunities you're not seeing, right? So this is where a lot of homeowners are just making assumptions and they assume that there are no opportunities. And again, I'm guilty of it too, because I have said many times, and it still is true, that inventory is tight. So the opportunities are not at an all-time level, right? But the opportunities for you really depend on your particular preferences, tastes, needs, wants. And we do that analysis and really come down to an understanding of whether this is the right move or not, right? Because at the end of the day, if what you want and need is not available and you're not flexible to look outside that scope, then maybe it's not the time for you to make a move, right? Um, the assumption that nobody's buying, please don't go under that assumption. Sales are happening even with the interest rates, even when the interest rates ballooned up to 8% just a couple of years back. The fact that they've been more stable, to me, is a better thing than it going up and down all over the place, especially rising nonstop. But the buyers, it's been long enough that buyers understand this is what it is, right? It's not that they're hoping and praying for the numbers to drop all of a sudden. The numbers were at an all-time low, interest rates, I mean, because there was a global epidemic at the time. So in order to help with the economy at the time, that's what was done, right? The interest rate went down tremendously at near zero, which for us meant that interest rates were in the twos and threes, right? That was a once in a lifetime opportunity to happen then. Now they've been in the six and mid sixes. Like I said, they went up close to 7. They went up to 8 a few years back. But on average, over the last 42 years, 7% interest rates is the average. So think about that for a second. So we're still in the low sixes to mid sixes as of this recording. And people, because the news and all these things say that interest rates are so high, they just go with that. But back in 1982, interest rates were 18%. Now, that's not comparable to today, but that's why the percentages, you got to throw that out the window and understand, what does that mean as my monthly payment? And like I said, you can look it up from, I forgot if it was 1972 or 1982 to now. If you look at the average interest rate, mortgage interest rate, you'll see that it was hovering around the 7% total. So the fact that we're in the sixes, we're under, we're just about average, just a little, right? So people assume that everything's expensive, but it's all relative, right? Granted, prices continue to go up, but now they're not in the double-digit increases year over year that they were for the last 6 or 7 years, which was unsustainable, but it continued, right? Now it's a lot more manageable, where home prices are still overall in New York going up approximately like in the single digits, around 3.5% to 4% year over year. So luckily, your home still increased in value, and people are still buying it despite the interest rates, right? And we'll talk about another option with interest rates too that is not talked about enough, let me tell you. So all this to say that this is why I encourage homeowners to sit down with an experienced real estate professional. And I know you guys don't like when agents are pushy. I personally dislike it when somebody's a salesy, just pushy person. I've never been that way. That has cost me deals in the past, but I can't operate that way. I come from more of a consultant angle, where I'm literally dissecting your situation and trying to analyze what I would recommend as the best course of action to take. Whether you take it or not, completely up to you, right? But I'm not one to guess. I'm not one to just pick a decision out of a hat. I like to analyze your situation thoroughly. I've had many times in the past where I've sat with sellers and told them that their best move is to not make a move at all. I'm not afraid of saying that. I'm not looking out for my pocket. I'm looking out for my prospective client's pocket, your pocket, because at the end of the day, I love to put my head down on my pillow and sleep with a clean conscience. At the very minimum, that's why I do it. At the other end of the day, the real reason, I'll tell you right now, is that I treat every person, every client that I speak to, as if they were my family, right? I give them advice from the heart. Does that cost me money? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, if my mom was to come to me with the question that you're posing, what would I tell her? If my brother came to me, if my uncle, if my cousin would come to me with these questions, with your exact scenario, how would I advise them? I'm not thinking of it from my perspective. I am always thinking about, how can I take care of you, right? I know that sounds corny, but that's the way I approach this business, period, end of story, right? And I do that by analyzing, understanding, and providing my guidance. And if it's not taken, it's not taken. And a lot of times I may not take the transaction if you're going to do something that I feel is going to put you in a bad position. Not afraid to do that, right? So, sorry, I went on a tangent there, but one of the biggest mistakes that people make at the end of the day is that they make major financial decisions without actually looking at the numbers. Um, they make them in advance. They make them without, the true knowledge, the true clarity of what's going on. And they'll guess what their home is worth. They'll guess, what they would walk away with. They guess what a new monthly payment would be on a mortgage. They guess at what options exist. And that guessing, a lot of times, just from experience and having these conversations, all it does is create more anxiety, right? And to the point where a lot of people are also just like, forget it. It's not even realistic. It's not something I could do, right? But knowledge, knowing these numbers, knowing the options, knowing what you can do, that's what creates confidence. That's what can actually empower you to make a decision that could be life-changing, multi-generationally changing, life-changing to your family, to your future. Wealth is built through real estate many times. It's a wonderful vehicle. Feel free to research on how to build wealth through real estate. I'm here to protect your wealth and to help you make, financial decisions through real estate that really can help you at the end of the day, based on that analysis, that conversation, everything we just talked about, right? So again, one of the tools that I am offering you, if you would like a copy of it, is that net sheet. If you're not familiar with it, it's going to show you what you might walk away with after selling the property. And again, you can factor in all those things like the estimated sales price, the mortgage payoff, commissions that you would be paying out, taxes, attorney fees, registering fees with the city, closing costs in general. At the end of the day, the goal is simple, right? It's to give you a realistic picture of what your proceeds might look like, right? Because once you know that number, everything's going to change. Your perspective is going to change. Your outlook's going to change, or it may not. Maybe you were right, but you won't know you were right until the numbers are crunched, right? So, let me see. There was another thing I wanted to say, and just to rehash what I said before, right? Um, let's say you do own a home, right? And after everything is paid off, just one more time, you walk away with $200,000. You see that as the money walking away with, but that's all you see, right? You're not paying, you're not looking at what else you can do, right, from that point on. But if that $200,000 became the down payment on your next home, now we're talking about something very different, right? Now, a larger down payment, I'm rehashing this because this is important and I think it's very underrated. Um, a larger down payment means a smaller principal balance on your new home, on your new mortgage, right? And that may mean a more affordable monthly payment than what you actually thought. Sometimes it could be more manageable than what you currently have, but a lot of times it's more manageable than what you think, right? Or at the end of the day, you'll understand by playing that scenario out and looking at the numbers and taking advantage of the net sheet and taking advantage of the mortgage calculator or speaking to a lender, speaking to me, and we walk you through everything that's going on. How much are you selling for? How much are you netting? How much would the next home cost? How much down payment you're putting that? Or sometimes you can buy it all in cash, right? Which then who cares about the interest rates? And then once you see all these numbers being crunched, suddenly a move, it starts becoming worth it. It goes from impossible. The move goes from impossible to worth exploring. So, once you know what your estimated proceeds is going to be, it really helps enable you to plug in different scenarios where you can see that being scared of selling during this time makes no sense, right? It could be, different purchase prices that you put in there, different down payment amounts, different interest rates, different tax estimates. You can really begin to see the full picture of the numbers that really are the most important thing for you when it comes down to brass tacks, right? Besides terms and conditions, your lifestyle, all that, money is a big component of real estate, right? You don't want to be house rich and lifestyle poor, is what I always say, right? You get to determine what your tolerance is, but we want to make sure that we put you in a situation that you would be happy with, right? Um, and again, a mortgage calculator is just the beginning, and that sheet is just the beginning. Those are tools that we use in conjunction with a consultation. So I would definitely send those tools to you, but it's not going to replace speaking to a qualified lender. They can play different scenarios for you, in terms of, hey, if you put this down payment, this is what your mortgage would be. If you put this down payment, this is what your mortgage is going to be. If you did, other options, they can tell you all that. Oh, if you want to qualify for this type of mortgage, well, then you have to pay these things off, or do this, or do that. And the same thing with me as an agent. We'll be able to explore possibilities, and with a lender and an agent, with me and a lender involved, we can bounce ideas off each other as well, and be in conjunction on what moves are the ones to make and which ones are not, right? Because it's so empowering to know, right? Now, there is one tool that I kind of talked about earlier, which I don't think it has enough. Honestly, if I wasn't in the business, I would have never heard about this. And I think that is very underrated. And even speaking with some of my friends that were looking to purchase a property, they didn't even know this existed. And again, it reinforced the concept in my head that we're not talking about it enough, right? And it's something that many homeowners have heard about, but don't fully understand, and then others that have never heard about it. And that's what's called an interest, an interest rate buy down, right? Now, excuse me, I'm not a mortgage lender. I'm not giving mortgage advice, right? But I do think that it's important that homeowners know that these conversations exist, right? That this is even possible. Excuse me. So a buy down, it's basically a strategy that may help reduce the current interest rate on a mortgage under certain circumstances, right? Details vary, every situation is different, but that's why it's important to speak directly with a lender who can explain all the options, who explains how this works, who explains how much it costs. But I've seen many people that they just think that the down payment that they have is not enough, or that the interest rate is too high, or what have you. And then when they have a conversation with the lender and discover that there are strategies that are available that they never considered, again, knowledge creates clarity. So because so many people talk about interest rates, very few people are focused on the opportunity, right? So that program, the buy down, is you pay a certain amount to reduce your interest rate for X amount of years. Let's say it's 2 years. The idea is that your interest rate for the first year is going to be lower. The second year starts going up a little bit, and then the third year, I believe it goes back to more market, to the market, or to what that number was. Again, speak to your lender, who will be able to guide you exactly on the program. But the whole idea is that you would actually have a lower interest rate than a lot of people do, or from the regular marketplace, because you're paying for it to be lower for X amount of time, right? So the idea being that at the end of that time period, you're hoping that interest rates went down so that you can refinance and get at a lower rate. Basically, that's kind of the strategy. Again, it doesn't work for everybody, and it's not always available. And it really depends if it makes sense for your situation, but ask your lender about it. That was my purpose of including it in this. Just talk to them and see if it makes sense, if it's a good idea to do. Because if you think about it, like I said, you sell your home, you have X amount of equity, you're putting that equity towards a new property, right? So let's, again, the 200,000, you're putting it towards $1 million. And now that means that your mortgage is an $800,000 mortgage at whatever it is right now, whatever the interest rate is now. But if you paid a certain amount, you'd be able to have a lower interest rate on that mortgage, on that amount, on the 800,000, and be able to pay a lower interest for that, for this year, next year, and then it would go back. So again, talk to them about the strategy, but I don't think it's talked about enough. I think it makes sense in some scenarios. So please feel free to ask them about that, or ask me and I can connect you with somebody, right? So now I want to give you a little bit of an inside thing. into the industry, but I think it's more known now. As a home seller, when you're talking about there's not home, I don't see the homes that I want to buy, that sort of thing, or I don't, or there's no opportunity or this or that. I want you to start taking inventory of the areas that you want to go to, that you want to move to, right? And start looking at some of these homes that have been on the market for 60, 90 days, you know, over 120 days. What might that mean, right? Now, with homes being on the market that long, the seller might be more flexible, right? I always say that even a quiet market for when you have let's say your home is on the market and 30, 60, 90, 120 days goes by and you're not getting offers, you're not getting showings. You think the market's quiet, but the market is actually screaming at you, telling you that the price that you have it for is wrong. It's asking you to reposition the market so they can actually be interested in the property, right? So sometimes, now granted, days on market have been longer lately than they've been in years past. So in some markets, a 60, 90-day window, 102-day window is normal. I want to say like Forest Hills off the top of my head, the last time I looked, I think was 64 days for a single family, right? But if you're looking at properties that have been longer on the market, even if they're priced higher, overpriced, excuse me, it may be worth your while to take a look and see if that's the type of property you want. And maybe you can make an offer that they might consider, right? Because that could help. Maybe they would even be willing to help you with a concession where they would be contributing towards your closing costs. Maybe they would help with the rate buy down that I talked about before. We actually helped one of our clients negotiate that. So we were able to get one of our buyers to have their buy down paid for by the seller. So those are things that are not actively marketed because they're not for everybody, but it's something that can be done, right? I mean, honestly, maybe they would negotiate in ways that they wouldn't have 30, 60, 90 days before, right? So you don't know until you ask. So keep that in the back of your mind. Keep it in your pocket when you're thinking about the different options that could be there or may not be there, right? And this is one of those opportunities that exist during these periods of uncertainty because you combine the length of time of a home being on the market, longer and longer. And a lot of times, yes, the properties are overpriced, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to come back down to a market reality if they truly want to sell their home or need to sell their home, right? So when a lot of people stop looking for opportunities, especially in these periods of uncertainty, that's when it could become easier to actually find the opportunity, right? Let's flip this conversation around for 2 seconds though. Let's say that you are the seller that has had your home on the market for 60 days or more. First of all, don't panic, right? And I'm not telling you that means that every buyer is going to be able to negotiate with you, but I just gave you some tools that can be enticing to a buyer, right? Where it's helping with the with concessions, with the buy, the rate buy down, that sort of thing. But context matters, right? Because 60, 90, 120 days might feel long because you're feeling anxious. You've prepared the home, you prepared every time somebody shows the property. The agent and you came to an agreement. This is going to be the price that it should sell for. Context matters, right? Because what if the average days on market in that neighborhood are 90 days and you're at day 92, right? You're not really on the market that long. You're just basically it's par for the course in that pocket. So as much as people look for, opportunities to make lower offers at that point, sometimes it just that market, that pocket, that's their average days on market period, right? So you have to look at it through that lens if you're already listed. And the same thing, like I just said about let's say you're selling your home and you're buying that property, right? But that's completely, that's a completely different conversation though. If the average days on market is 20 days, 30 days, and you're already at day 140, right? Because that means that the market is yelling at you, that it is advising you what you're asking for your home is not what we are willing to pay. That's what that silence means when it's an aberration between the average days on market in that neighborhood, in your area, and the actual length of time that you've been on the market, if you've been on the market for quite some time, right? Obviously there are variables like interest rates shooting up overnight, or global issues that are very disruptive, but this is a rule of thumb to kind of keep in mind when you're selling and when you're shopping, right? So know the numbers. And again, you don't have to do this research. Just talk to your favorite agent and they'll be able to run those numbers for you and tell you what the average days on market are. And just listen to what the market is giving you, the feedback that it's giving you, right? Sometimes you just need a pricing adjustment. Sometimes it's a marketing adjustment. Sometimes it's a positioning adjustment, but don't panic in either scenario, right? The answer is just understanding the data and then responding appropriately. Because again, even from this perspective, clarity, it just beats fear, right? Every single time. So to bring this all together, right? The question that we started with at the beginning is, should you be scared of selling your home now? So no, period. But that would have been a very short episode, right? You should be informed. You should understand your options. You should definitely know what your home would sell for in the marketplace, in the current market. And then again, if let's say you have to revisit it in 6 months, markets continue to evolve, to change. So you need to not be based on that original consultation. It's just rerunning the numbers, right? You should know what you're going to walk away with. You should understand what your next move could look like financially. And then you should understand what opportunities exist in the current market, and don't just go off of news reports and articles and tweets. Actually consult with a professional that can actually give you guidance on this. Now, if you ask an agent and they're not able to do this research for you, let me tell you, that's a red flag. Definitely talk to someone that you're comfortable with, that you can confide in, and that has the expertise to do this type of research for you and give you this type of consultation, so you're not going in the wrong direction, right? Forget the headlines, forget fear in general, forget assumptions, just go with facts, go with numbers. It's the easiest way to understand the reality that there are people still moving. And it's one of the main reasons I got into this business, is that no matter what's going on in the world, people will always have to move. Life is always happening, right? So let's say that the home that you want to move to is not available today. Well, someone might have to downsize tomorrow. So it's an ongoing search. It's an ongoing process, right? There are opportunities being created every day. So don't get down on it. Don't just lock yourself into hermit mode when it comes to real estate. Really consult with somebody that has your best interests at heart, somebody that you can confide your situation in, and not feel like you're being pushed into selling. Again, like I say, and I swear by this, is I cannot want to sell the home more than you, and I cannot want to buy a home more than you. I have to match your energy. It's just that simple, right? And really, the people who make the best decisions are usually the ones who take the time to understand, there are all to understand all of their options before they actually decide on something, right? So if you'd like an estimated net sheet showing what you might walk away with, please feel free to reach out to me. You can comment here. You can hit me up on Instagram at David Garcia, KW, all one word, or 917-982-8899, or email me at dgarcia@kw.com. Very simple. And again, if you'd like to access the mortgage calculator, I'll put the link below, but you can also go to sellyourqueenshome.com. Go to the top. There's one portion that says, what is my home worth? So you'll be able to find out, how much your home would be worth. So I can prepare that for you. And then 2 things over, you'll see something that says mortgage, how much do I have to pay or something to that extent, you'll be able to see the home mortgage calculator there. But again, I'm going to put it below, right? In either way, either scenario, any scenario, reach out to me. Please feel free to ask me questions no matter what you see. Feel free to get to know me a little better by going to YouTube, searching Sell Your Queen's Home, or going to David Garcia KW on Instagram. I'm posting there every single day. You can see, the fun times that I have, the not so fun times, and really get to know, what I'm all about. So if you'd simply like to have a conversation about whether moving makes sense for you in your situation, I'd be happy to help you with that. And again, as always, I truly thank you for, joining me on this episode of Sell Your Queen's Home. Again, I'm David Garcia with Keller Williams Realty Landmark. And at the end of the day, the goal isn't to eliminate uncertainty. It's not that. It's to gain enough clarity to make a confident decision that makes sense for you at the end of the day. So I hope you got something out of this, and I will definitely see you on the next episode. Oh, and Knicks in 5. Let's go Knicks. I had to represent.